Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Patty Giarrusso, and this is Let's Talk Pets on Society Bites Radio. Today, we welcome to the show Heather Junqueira with BioScent K9. BioScent K9 is a Myakka City, Florida nonprofit organization founded by Heather, and the organization utilizes the power of canine scent detection to develop non-invasive ways of screening for life-threatening diseases. And I asked Heather to be on the show because right now they're working on something that is very timely during this pandemic. And what they're doing right now is they're working on a research study to see if the dogs can be trained to detect COVID-19. Heather's background is in breeding and genetics, and she began researching cancer and came across a California program where researchers were working with dogs to detect breast and lung cancer by sniffing human breath, condensation, or saliva. And the research showed that dogs, in fact, can detect cancers at early stages. And so now they're working to hopefully detect COVID-19. So welcome to the show, Heather.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so this was very interesting. I saw an article about it and I really wanted to talk with you so we could learn more about what it is that your organization is doing. So first off, could you tell us how you got started with BioScent K9?
So BioScent K9 started about 5 years ago when I used to work for Southeastern Guide Dogs years ago, and I quit working there when I had my daughter, and I was their breeding manager. And after my daughter started grade school, I wanted to get back into training dogs to do some type of service work. So BioScent Canine started out by training diabetic alert dogs, and then I had also lost my father to cancer, and so I was passionate about cancer research as well. And that's when I came across the studies that had been done in California by the Pine Street Institute, showing that dogs could detect lung cancer and breast cancer off of breath condensate. So I was really fascinated by that. And I reached out to Myakka McCulloch, their lead researcher there, and just, explained my background and told him I was very interested in the work he was doing. And he got right back with me and shared all his research and asked if I would like to start duplicating some of that research. So that's how we got started working on the cancer side of things.
Mm-hmm. Now, this new COVID-19 obviously is probably something that is, it's new to all of us. And so you started training your dogs to work on this. So first off, let's talk about the type of dogs that you use and how many you currently have in your organization.
So we use beagles, and we have 24 beagles, and we have 2 Basset Hounds. So the Basset Hounds were donated to us a couple of years ago by a woman who had survived breast cancer, and she was a Basset Hound breeder. So she donated Teddy and Sunshine to us, and then all of the rest of our dogs are beagles. We have a breeding program where some of our dogs, we have some breeders, but we also take dogs from rescues as well. It's kind of 50-50, dogs that we've bred in our program and dogs that we've rescued. And we have puppy raisers and host families that several of the dogs live with, so they're not always in the kennels. They're pretty much just in the kennels when they're working.
Okay. That's really interesting. Now, do you find that the Basset Hounds learn any differently, or are they just as effective as the beagles?
The Basset Hounds are incredibly sweet. They have amazing noses, but unfortunately, they don't have the biggest work ethic. So they'll go in the training room and they'll sniff for like maybe a couple minutes and like 1 or 2 rounds, and then they're done. They're like, okay, just rub my belly. So yeah, it's pretty funny. One of them, Teddy, the male, he's ended up living in my house. He's more of a pet at this point in time. And Sunshine, we're going to breed probably with to cross her with Beagle and see if we can get that amazing nose of the Basset Hound with that high energy level of the Beagle.
Okay. So how long have you been working with the beagles on the COVID-19 project? Has this been going on for a couple weeks, a couple months? What?
We've been we start as soon as everything kind of started happening with COVID. I started getting a lot of phone calls, and people are like, "Oh, can you train the dogs to detect this?" And so we started putting everything together for the research studies, getting all the approvals and everything in place. And finding out what regulations were in place, because dealing with something so new, getting samples is very, very difficult. So we finally got everything in place, and actually our samples are supposed to be here on Friday, hopefully tomorrow, and they will start training on Monday.
Okay. So is it the same training methods that you use for all the other diseases and cancers?
It is similar. There are some variations, because with the cancer research, we don't actually train the dogs to indicate directly on a person. People would send in a face mask, and we would test the mask. So the diabetic alert dogs were trained to indicate directly on the person. So it's actually more similar to the diabetic alert dog training. Our study is going to be twofold. First, we're going to see if the dogs are able to detect, positively indicate on nasal pharynx swabs and oral pharynx swabs from patients who are positive for COVID-19. And so first we train to see if they can find the swabs amongst other swabs from people who were either healthy controls or people who had other types of viruses. So once we determine that, then we're going to if they're able to do that, then we're going to look at two more directions that we're going to study. One, can the dogs be trained to indicate on that moving target? So could they find that person in a crowd that has COVID? So that's one direction. The other direction is, can they find where COVID is located on a surface? So I think there's two ways in the future, if the dogs are successful at this, that they could be utilized. One would be to help with cleaning areas. So they could go into stores, to hospitals, to nursing homes, and indicate where the virus is located on a surface. This is already being done in some places with MRSA. So that's one route the dogs could go. The other route would actually be screening large numbers of people in a crowd. So the way I envision this could happen would be very similar to like when you go through TSA. I don't know if you've ever walked through where they have the square and they have the dog, and the dog kind of tracks behind you. So I envision you could set up something very similar. So if you were going into a sporting event or to a concert, where you could walk through the square and the dog would track behind you, and then if you were positive, and possibly didn't know you were sick, then the dog would indicate on that person, and then you would have to have rules in place for how to deal with it from that point on.
Now, there has been in the news recently, certain pets, they say, have gotten COVID, but possibly not the same as the people get. So is there any danger that your dogs could get it while they train?
So the samples that we are using come in a transport medium that actually kills the virus. So the virus cannot be spread with the samples that we're using.
Okay. Yeah. See, I don't understand how it all works. So that's good to know, because just thinking about my mind's going like, okay, so how do you do it and keep yourself safe and keep the dogs safe?
Yeah. That's really the biggest, one of the biggest obstacles that we had to overcome. And it's still on the experimental phase. So we don't know if we'll have to go back to that drawing board and try to find a safe way to use, samples that have not been put into a transport medium. But for now, this was the safest way to go for the people that work with our organization and for the dogs as well. So that's the route that we're taking.
Now, this may be a silly question, but, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about things. And of course, here in Florida, we've had a lot of nursing homes that with people that were infected. And is it possible, and this is why I say this, is this a silly question? I mean, can a dog smell through a mask? Would a dog wear, possibly, like if there was some big incident in a nursing home, would they wear a dog mask? I don't know.
No, we would not put a mask on the dogs. They could smell through one, but that would definitely impede them. That would be like saying, okay, go run a marathon with a bunch of weights on. The thing about dogs, and so far, there's very little evidence that dogs can contract this strain of of the COVID virus. The dogs get a very different type of coronavirus. It's one that's it's a GI, causes GI issues for the dogs, and our dogs are vaccinated for that. But so far, there's very, very little evidence that this is zoonotic in the way that it would go from the humans to the dogs. I think cats are much more at risk from what's come out than dogs are.
Okay. Yeah. I thought it was a stupid question, but I thought I'd ask anyways because
no stupid questions. No.
So as you're, how long do you expect, I mean, I don't know. How long does it take you when you're training, whether it be diabetes or cancer, in this case, COVID? What is generally an average time that it takes to train, and then you feel that, yep, they've got it and we can move forward?
So scenting a dog just on the first phase will take about 6 weeks to know whether they can find that odor in a controlled setting. The next step will be training them to hit that on a moving target, and then actually hitting that on someone who actually has the virus. So those phases are a little bit longer, and but I would say probably a phase 2 probably take about 8 weeks, when you're hitting, the moving targets. That's with a dog who's already been socialized in public. The whole socialization process for a dog can take about 2 years. So that's kind of the longest part of that process, training a dog to work in public. But a lot of our dogs are already, in that process of training, so where they're good with public access. The scenting part, basic scenting is about 6 weeks. The secondary scenting, which is almost considered like vapor waking, where you're picking up an odor in the air and then finding that target it came from, that's probably going to take about another 8 to 12 weeks.
Okay. Well, that's a shorter time frame than I thought you would tell us.
Yeah, it's not that long. It's really not. They pick it up pretty quickly, especially the beagles.
Yeah. So what kind of help do you need right now? You are a nonprofit organization, right?
Yes, we are a nonprofit organization. So our biggest challenge is funding. The more funding we have, the faster we can move the project. So we are actually doing a fundraiser right now. We have set up where people can text. They can text "Scent COVID-19" to 44321 and make a donation that way. And any size donation helps, even if it's just $5. Like, every little bit helps to go towards feeding the dogs and caring for the dogs and moving, this project forward.
Do you have any grant money for this project? It sounds like, this is such a beneficial project to the world, basically. It seems like where's Bill Gates giving you some money, right?
Exactly. Yes, we are avidly working on that. We have applied for so many grants in the past month, and we're still waiting, to hear back. There's a couple of possibilities out there, but nothing has fully come through yet. So we keep our fingers crossed, and we just keep chipping away, at the different organizations that are giving grant money, and hopefully it will spark the interest of a few of them.
Yeah. Now, you're raising money. Now, what's your goal?
So our goal is $350,000.